What happened to the chorus? I thought we were going to do like a mixing on way of hi.
Hi. Welcome to In Frame.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to In Frame.
That wasn't rehearsed, I promise.
Yeah, wow, Jabu. Jabu made sure that we cannot just get him off guard.
No ways, I was prepared this time around. I was like, no, you guys, we're doing this right.
Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today we have a very special person with us as our guest. We have Jabu Makhubu with us. Jabu is very special in so many ways. I think a lot of students that are studying architecture, who have studied in University of Johannesburg or who are currently studying at Wits, who know Jabu. But I know Jabu personally, because Jabu almost has taught me in every stage of architectural studies. In undergrad, he taught me in undergrad. He taught me in undergrad when I was, in my second year. And then he also taught me when I was doing my degree, and then he was my supervisor for my master's, with Dr. Finzi Saidi. So he plays a lot of, role in my life when it comes to my understanding of architecture, when it comes to pedagogy. And then I've taught with Jabu. I taught with Jabu for 3 years under Unit 15X, where I was a unit tutor. So it's just right to have Jabu here.
Finally! I've been looking so forward to this. It's been a long time coming. Thank you for inviting me.
Honestly, it was such an honor to have you. I mean, Jabu also has been a critical role player in my life. He was my supervisor in my master's and my honors year. Honestly, such a joy, and actually now become a friend. And I'm actually really, really excited to see what we're talking about today.
Awesome. Great. So today we just want to really touch on Jabu's studio and his practice because I've taught with him. And after a while, I started running my own studio. But to see and hear the things that Jabu has been teaching, where I haven't had the opportunity to be part of it.
Unfortunately,
he
left us out.
I feel like
I have to say something, guys. I can't teach you everything.
You're collecting.
I feel like it's an opportunity to also learn something, from that studio to get to know what is happening, So yeah, what do you think, V?
I think the one thing is we should let Jabu answer one of these questions sometimes.
Yes.
But I think it's been so interesting seeing how he's carried a different perspective on architectural, like just academia in general. And I think I don't want to say much more because I think we're going to ruin the surprise.
Yes.
Jabu, what are we talking about actually?
Well, from what you guys told me, we're going to be talking about how to think about architecture from a position of care, of love, and of just sensitivity. Post our very traumatic history in South Africa, a lot of attention has been focusing on talking about the pain, which I think is important, but also alongside pain, what makes South Africa so special is that we are able to dance with trauma and joy at the same time. I think that requires enough attention as well.
I like the term dance because I think that's what we're really going to see. How do we dance with this? Because they're two very extreme, perspectives, points, emotions, so weird. But what actually prompted you to start this? What was your final? I've had enough.
I must admit, both of you and a number of the students that I was teaching back then when I started UJ were the prompt for me. After listening to so many stories that were only about pain, I wondered, is that the only thing that we are able to experience, especially as Black people, pain? Or are there also moments, even with all that's going on around us, that are filled with joy and love? And to me, I see love, care, and joy as really pedagogical tools that are quite important in the architectural discipline because they make us ask very tough questions. To imagine otherness, joy in the face of trauma. I think to me that's a very important question to ask even in this time.
Wow. I think that is very powerful, because I also kind of experienced that when I was also supervising students or co-supervising. At a point, it becomes so it becomes difficult. It becomes a lot,
Yeah.
you know.
And
And you're in the studio thinking, how can I direct these students, and becomes so heavy
Yeah.
on you. So it is quite interesting to also talk about the other, the other things that makes the country what it is, which I think is really exciting.
But why do we feel that it's actually easier to just default to the trauma? What makes it so much easier?
I mean, because of our country and how our country is set up, we are still in a position, I would argue, of transition. We have just, gotten into this democratic dispensation in just 30 plus years. Those years are really years of a lot of questioning. And part of the questions that we are asking right now, I think that have been asked since 1994, is who are we beyond what our past looks like, beyond colonization, beyond apartheid? Who are we? But to do that, you need to reflect what is that thing that has created the society that we are in. And so we've been filled with questions that we're trying to really make sense of that.
Yeah.
And that sometimes we lose sight of. We're trying to make sense of this because we are trying to imagine an alternative future. But we focus so much energy on trying to understand the past that the future now doesn't get as enough energy.
But we've also become comfortable in that.
Yeah.
I think becoming comfortable, it's almost as if we've set this kind of identity around trauma, saying that this is where we are as South Africans or people living in South Africa. We are people that are comfortable discussing this trauma. But if prompted now to speak about the other, I don't know what that is. To be honest, I haven't experienced it myself. I'm actually very curious to hear how you do it. How do you break us out?
It takes a village, by the way. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I have all the answers to that question. But what I'm doing in my studios, in the work that I'm doing with my first years at Wits, is to give space to exploring voices that are speaking about the tenderness of architecture. And so I've got a lecture series or guest lecture series where I invite different practitioners, artists, painters, photographers who are really using Johannesburg as the backdrop or the focal point in their work, but are also exploring what Joburg has to offer, the diversity of voices, and to really think about belonging in South Africa and being part of Johannesburg with its multiple complex layers, including life. And so the center there is to how can we bring love into our work? So how can we work architecture and do spatial thinking through a lens of love and care?
So how do we then express love in a legitimate way as opposed to only dwelling on it as just a mere feeling? How do we then introduce it beyond the feeling?
The feeling, I think, is a good start.
Yeah.
But I think love is like critical pedagogy, a very serious thing. Because for you to love, it means you need to care. And if you care, it means I care about your well-being. Your well-being is beyond just the physical, just the emotional, it is also the spatial. And to me, that caring about the spatial condition, before we ask what a building looks like, we need to ask, how is this caring for the next individual? How will that bring joy to the next person? To me, you need to care about that. And I think because of a number of spatial history, that sense of care in the design of homes and spaces wasn't there. But now we need to be intentional about bringing that into our studios.
Are you able to maybe give us an example?
Well, the classic example of how I've done it is to make students write letters, and those letters being letters to themselves and to their ancestors, to think about a space that they could be in to have a conversation about love. So in my first year, the first week is write a letter to your ancestor who you would like to have a conversation with them about love, to ask them intimate questions about what their love is. And so you need to base that on this relationship that you want to have or that you have with them and design a space that you think will hold that question.
It's powerful.
You know what comes to mind? I remember when Veronica and I were running our unit, we had a student who was interested in this idea of love, and I think his project was there's a question. The question was, what if the primary role of architecture is love? And in that thesis, the students was interested in questioning modernism and this whole idea of minimalism and what it means if love was a central theme of architecture. How would we even celebrate buildings? What are the aesthetics of buildings going to look like? And so I remember the students actually reimagining the atrium of Father and sort of imagining if this space was really about love, what would it look like? And so for me, it's interesting, and I would like to know what are some of the projects that are coming up in your studio that if you compare it with when we were talking about this idea of trauma, what is coming up that is exciting you, that is surprising you?
What I'm excited about really is the amount of different voices and stories that the students bring in. At first, they're a bit hesitant to speak about love because somehow it's treated like something that is only spoken about in private and it's not something that is critical. But once they open themselves up to that question of thinking about architecture through the lens of care and love, what comes up is a lot of the stories and the projects that are then presented are projects that have a lot of care. They care about how they represent the work. They care about how they speak about the work because suddenly they are talking about something intimate, something that requires a sensitivity.
Yeah.
Versus when you are talking about an office park that you're designing, which is often removed from a personal connection.
Yeah.
And so when you speak about that, when you represent that, you represent it in shadow people. So you've got a drawing that's filled with shadow people. But suddenly now, people, actually, students are drawing themselves into the drawings, are drawing the familiar faces and people into their drawings and populating them. And to me, what that represents is they're now also able to imagine themselves in the future.
Yeah.
That's powerful because from my from my year and even previous years, Jabu, you'd always have a problem with having these black silhouettes
Always.
with no identity. No identity. It's like, who are these people? And I remember you always saying, these people have an identity, they have a face. Why don't you place faces in your drawings? I remember that being such a point to always make. And I'm thinking, wow, you're actually allowing the student to have agency and assert themselves and assert. It's more than just producing. It's now actually realizing that you are part and parcel of the production process, and you are going to be partaking in the process in the product itself. But what have you found as a challenge, perhaps, maybe in assessing such subjectivity? Askis.
Gosh, you guys, those difficult questions. I thought we were going to talk about lots of stuff.
We're gonna go back and forth.
So the challenges are really because you can't quantify it in terms of numbers, the impact and the work. The challenge is to find ways of giving value or proving it in terms of value base. So when you are assessing work that is so intense and emotional and personal, it is important that you also are aware of your own biases as a lecturer, and that you are able to provide a space of caring for those ideas, that they come from a very important point. And so your matrix, your rubric, needs to reflect that. It needs to transform and to reflect not just have you done a section, is it to this scale and all of those things, but to also understand the level of engagement that the student has had to go through.
But at what stage do you then introduce these kind of precepts? Since you're teaching first year, I would imagine that obviously the conventions are there somewhere. And then how do the students actually take this in? I mean, it sounds like a lot. It sounds like a PhD.
But a PhD, by the way.
But it does sound like the student is expected to think, and it's lovely. But how do they handle it really?
They don't.
They don't. Okay, they're
Yeah.
struggling.
They don't. Most of the time they're thrown in the deep end,
Oh,
and we are
my
both
word.
trying to swim, and I can't swim by the way. So no one is saving anyone right now.
Wow.
That helps. That helps.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm sorry, students.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm also still trying to figure it out, guys.
Yeah.
This is not how I was taught.
Yeah.
I was taught very differently. This is how a section is done. This is how you represent a plan.
Mm.
That's it.
How do you then show them how to develop a lens to see? Like if you do a site visit, for instance, what is it that now we should be looking for? And now I don't think you should speak to students. You're speaking to us now because we're also learning from
Of
you.
course, yeah.
And we want to know what should we look for? What are we looking for in a site?
Silences.
Mm.
What are the things that don't jump out immediately when you get there? What are the things that are seen only when you peel off one layer? To me, those are very interesting and important points because they tell us that there's something that has happened here.
Yeah.
There's something that we need to care for. Sites always tell us what we need. And so when we learn to listen attentively to the silences, I think we hear.
So can I enroll in first year, please?
Yeah. I think we need a readmission.
We need to redo this because
Yeah.
coming from a point of practice, I think it's something so necessary.
It
Only
is.
because how we are seeing sites is obviously from a monetary perspective.
Very financial.
It's very financially driven, and you end up unlearning what you get from varsity to then really to learn another way. And some of these things are so important. I think in spaces like Cape Town where they've got the public kind of they've got public policies that allow the public to vote on certain buildings being erected. There's a level of care when it comes to that, but there's so many places that don't have that where you're not forced to think of the people. You just have to think, what do we do?
Yeah.
And I think we've got a lot to learn from this.
Yeah.
And especially the silences. That's just so powerful.
And I think also, like, for me, I think what it also does, or what perhaps I would like to hear your point about it, is in touching on those sort of topics about this idea of care and love. I can almost imagine myself as an educator, what it does to me. Because as an educator, you almost also take on a different lens. Whereas where in the past you are looking at, have you done A, B, and C? Here you are hearing very sensitive stories and narratives, and you get to sort of know the students from a different level, and you get to care for the students from a different point of view, rather than where it was like, okay, this is the brief, plan, sections, elevation, it's this type of building, this is what you need to do. Whereas this allow you to get into a little bit of a place where you get to understand the students, right? Which I think, for me, I think is quite interesting. So as you're talking about it, like, we got to know about our student on a very different level. And it was only one student, And because these students was talking about this idea of love and what it means in architecture, all of a sudden we realized, oh, this person has this part of him, So I can only imagine, like.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one because what I've learned over the years is to appreciate that every student that is in the class brings with them some level of knowledge and something to share. And you can only tap into that if you care enough to want to understand or know them.
Yeah.
I make it a point that by at least end of first semester, I know each student by name, whether I have a class of 80 or 60, 70, by end of first semester, I need to be able to call them by name when I see them on the corridors and in any other space.
Wow.
Because that is another level of care to say, listen, I see you and I care what you have to contribute in the classroom. Even when they're silent at the back.
You still make an effort. That is pretty powerful because I think it's so difficult to manage that as a personal principle.
Yeah.
It shows that your brief goes beyond just the implementation for students. It's internal. And I think a lot of us in academia sometimes fail to think beyond just our mandate in the classroom. we need a sense of care
Yeah.
as well, because I see that we get so overwhelmed with just the numbers, the quantities, the having to do 5 briefs.
Yeah.
Having to there's a lot to say about this. Especially when it comes to care in architecture, starting from self.
Yeah.
Where do you find now students actually don't get it?
So I don't necessarily think that care is something that replaces something else. We still need the technical skills. We still need to be able to solve problems, especially space problems as architects and spatial practitioners. Where I find that sometimes we all get it, sometimes not so right, is we then think for one to exist, the others must be sacrificed. For care to exist, it means we must let go of our technical abilities and skills. We must let go of problem solving. I think those things, like the complexity of our cities, of our spaces, need to be dealt with together. And I think sometimes students choose one side, and that's when they don't really get it. So it's like they think, oh, I'm very technically orientated, so I'm just going to focus on when do we need to do the building. Or I'm more abstract and artistic, so I'm only going to care about the beginnings and the conceptual stages of the project. But I think a very strong, good spatial practitioner, architect, urban designer cares about both.
No, it's hard.
Yeah, but I think I'm really getting what you're saying, and because even with the GSA and the studios, the diverse studios that are there, I think the challenge comes when students sort of separate the, let's say, the unit theme of what they are doing from the technical abilities and the resolutions and all that, and you treat it as two different things. Whereas if you layered them, you realize that for me to actually, in a very simple terms, to actually create a very good drawing, I have to care. And for me, I think that becomes very interesting to kind of see the layers. But I wonder, what are some of the challenges you faced? Not with the students, but with the school. With the school, because it's not
School of Architecture.
Yeah, with the School of Architecture, with the faculty, with the department, because it's not an easy thing to just, say, I want to test something. I want to create this new briefs that touches on this thing. Whereas for years, we were not taught like that. We've not taught like that. The people running the schools have not been taught like that. They don't teach like that. And then all of a sudden you're like,
I want to do
I want to do this.
Hey guys.
When are you planning on releasing those?
Look, you don't have to spell, but what you can do is just tell us in general.
Yeah.
In general, like typical challenges.
Typical challenges.
Yeah.
One, as an antidote, I think it's important that I also mention that this topic is a topic of my PhD. So it is something that I've cared so much about that I really wanted to spend time thinking and writing about. And I say that because at the beginning, when I was writing my proposal and the feedback that I got from that proposal was less than complimentary. I was told, who are you to think you can label your work as radical? You need to go read books in some library in London for you to even have an opinion on this topic about education. Okay. So I can't have an opinion until I've read those books.
I need to drink.
No,
That's like, there was a disclaimer.
Yeah.
And so challenges are always there. And
Yeah.
sometimes they come from the institution itself, because institutions are really resilient spaces. They are able to ensure that they are not transformed in a way that will shift the center.
Yeah.
Maybe is a way of trying to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Continue.
As a way to try and protect themselves. So the only change that can happen is almost cosmetic changes. But the core of it,
you can't touch the core.
It's
precious. That
and radicality means you need to shift the core.
Yes.
And who are you to want to shift the core? To want to shift architecture from being about technical aspirations or technical ways of doing things to talk about care.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
And why?
So the challenge is there.
Yeah.
It's like, who needs this?
You know, and another
Wow.
challenge is the fact that in our discipline, because architecture borrows from a number of other theories and disciplines, in the architecture and urban design discipline, there isn't a lot of scholarship journals
Yeah.
that are based on the topic, and so
Yeah.
where we could really learn and grow together. And so, in many ways, we have to publish in spaces that are not architecture based, and so we're publishing to audiences that are not always in connection with the audience that we'd like to reach.
So they're not necessarily spatially inclined, but maybe more anthropological.
Yes, maybe in education.
Yeah.
That's a long mountain to climb.
Yeah.
And so we're not reaching our peers.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's true.
That's true.
But then now if we had to go back to the student, just to come back to the PhD, then how do we even think about precedent for the student?
Yeah.
I mean, like, how do you exemplify what you're talking about? Is that a challenging question?
No. Not really. I'm trying to answer it in as more diplomatic answer as possible. But I think it's important that I reflect a certain level of care for myself. I think that's important for you to care enough to take a break, to rest. This work can be demanding.
Yeah.
It can be so exhausting that you forget to replenish your own cup.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So you need to do that. I think that's very important to exemplify that through the way that you treat yourself, the way that you carry yourself. And I think that also helps.
So then when it comes to then precedent, you become the president of what it is.
That's a lot of pressure.
Is there precedent really, spatially, that you are now finding? Do you start to have you found now precedent that is maybe unfamiliar or uncanny?
There are some scholars that work in the same space, but not from the same discipline. For instance, for me, someone that I go back to over and over again is Bell Hooks, Paulo Freire. They really are one people that I go to think about my practice as an educator and how do I do it differently? How do I transform myself and the students and the studios that I find myself in? I think those to me have become precedent to how I do things. I try not necessarily to use the word precedent a lot, even in the studios, but to use to use a different word. What is your inspiration? I think to me that word is much more loose and occupies a diversity of references
and meaning.
And meaning. You know, what is that inspiration? What inspires you? What moves you today? What it could be a piece of text. It could be an object. It could be a building. But it's something. It could also be something that you are imagining. So it doesn't have to have lived a life. It has lived a life in your head, in your imagination. That's precedent.
And you bring it in.
And you bring it in.
Sure, if I can't draw it.
But I
sing it.
I really think that there was a point in our studio that we were thinking of actually why do you use the word crate? And we were struggling to find another word for it. And so for me, when you talk about finding a different word for this idea of precedent and looking at inspiration as an example of a word, for me it makes so much sense, because anytime you ask a student for a precedent, it only is architectural. Whereas when you ask the question, what inspires you today, it could be anything, and because I am really the believer that to create good architecture, you actually have to look at that which is not architecture. And so for me, like I really think it's really interesting, because then it allows students to kind of get outside what they know as architecture and accept the other, which is the care, the love, and to be able to now think through it, which is nice.
Have you found students then now leaning towards diverse mediums to express these themes and these topics of care? Is it because I could imagine you get almost kind of confined by the pen and paper, because it feels like it's a hard line, it's a finite line.
Yeah.
How do you then say, okay, now let's use something softer, let's
Yeah.
use something a little bit more tactile, a little bit. How do you start seeing yourself looking at mediums?
You know, the one thing I love about undergrad, especially first year and second year
Mm.
classes, because in many ways they have not been polluted by
By the life of architecture.
precedent, by
Yeah.
all the other things that have been pushed to them to that define what architecture is. They are much more open to testing and trying things. I always say that I can't do a lot of things. I can't really do a lot of graphics and whatnot. But what I can do is spark a question, an idea, and hopefully get it to a point where someone is interested enough to even try it, dare it, even though they haven't imagined it. To me, that is so powerful because when you get to postgrad, they have had 3 years of being grilled about your service is not working, your building not working.
100%.
That they are scared to try anything.
That's so true.
That will be anything else. You know?
Anything different.
And so we stick to just representing in pen and paper and drawing and lines, and that's it. Undergrad, and I'm learning so much from the students. They'll come with like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Do you think it will work? I'm like, let's try it. Let's see.
Yeah.
And so they are open at that. So I love undergrad for that particular reason. That the methods are open to exploration, to testing out, to failing, and coming back again.
From a practical sense, I need to be the devil's advocate, but how much time does that take? Because now I'm thinking we are experimenting with this, but then usually, from what my understanding, one brief is about a maximum of 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So how do we actually factor all of those feats in that time for that one brief or for that one output?
See, briefs are such powerful tools in academia and in the studio. It's important that we care enough about the brief and the content of the brief in order to have a different result.
Yeah.
So, for instance, one strategy that I do is instead of having one long, big brief, break it up into smaller chunks that build something.
Yeah.
And so the first brief or output for this may be something very abstract.
Yeah.
Another one may build from that abstract thing and start testing things in a space before we get to what the building would look like and feel like and work like. But by the time the 6-week ends, we've had so many experiments across the project that it is really not just about the final product, but is to reflect back on what was the journey that we've been through, what have we learned from this that led us to this. So when we attack it another time, what else can we introduce that shifts our learning, that challenges our convictions, and makes us think differently about space? And so I think briefs require us to take time and care in them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I can attest to, when you talk about briefs, I can attest to this because I have received your briefs, and I have worked with you developing briefs, and I can tell you the amount of work that goes through Jabu developing a brief is on another level. And he will refuse to repeat briefs. You know, like we will. I remember actually when we were about to start our unit, the year before, like let's say it was December, the following year we're starting our unit. And during the course of December, I'm like, when am I meeting Jabu? Because we will always meet and discuss and plan, and I'm like, oh, okay, actually I'm not seeing Jabu because I'm starting something, And the same thing happened, remember, in 2024 when we decided to take a break, and I call her in December and we are taking a break. And I'm like, V, are we not supposed to be writing something? It's like, no, we're not teaching next day. I'm like, oh, okay. So I truly understand like the care when you talk about it, and I think for me, it just shows, when we see the results of the work that comes out, and you see even when students that are even struggling, you can even see that in the struggle, there's something beautiful that comes out, which which I really think is amazing. The care,
Yeah.
you know, to the point that now when I go and examine, I get bored in a lot of places.
It's sad.
Wow.
We've been
And when I see
spoiled.
people, yeah, and I see people repeating the same thing over and over again, and I'm like, our context is not the same from last year.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, even if your
Mhm.
site is the same,
Yeah.
things have changed.
Yeah.
that's true.
You know, the political landscape is changing every time. Why is the breeze staying the same? Why are we not changing? Why are we not throwing something in to just spark something, you know? So for me, that care, for me, I think that what is exciting about this is that, and I'm quite excited that this is not just something that you teaching, but it's also like your PhD, you know? And I think it's something that perhaps needs to be taught in the academy, you know, like not just for students, but also for educators to understand what it means. Because one of the things that I think about a lot is that my wife is a teacher. She is a trained teacher, right? So she's got a degree in whatever, then she does what. And but to be a teacher, she has to do a postgraduate degree in education.
Yeah.
In that postgraduate degree in education, she's taught how to teach, right?
Yeah.
How to prepare this, how to do that. Sometimes I ask myself the question, how do we teach as architects
Yeah.
that are lecturing?
Mhm.
You know, is there a way that we can be taught how to teach? You know, and so sometimes for me, I think for me the advantage that I had was to be under you and Dr. Finzi. So for me, in my mind, I was like, I'm doing like postmasters. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing like postmasters. Because I remember when Professor Leslie Loco, you know, when I met with her for the first time when I was about to teach, and I said to her, I said, I don't think I'm ready. Because I just graduated and I don't think I'm ready. And then she said to me, you have Dr. Finzi and you have Jabu. Just see this period as a training period. Right? And now in hindsight, when I think about it, I'm like, I wish everybody goes through the same process. That you get to know how to care. You know, it's not just about ticking the boxes. You know, did you submit the brief? Yes. Next year, let's keep the same thing running. You know, so I get so passionate about this topic of briefs because I see it a lot. You know, I see it a lot, and I'm like, but why? You know, but why? What are you learning from the things that you got from the students? And why, if you are not able to change it, it means you didn't learn anything for the following year. I don't know. Like,
And you're not appreciating that you have a different group of students
that are coming.
that have different experiences. And so do those experiences not mean anything in the studio that you're teaching? To me, that's a very big question that we need to constantly ask, especially in our climate and time right now. How do we engage students and make them engaged in the work if we don't care enough to know what they are going through outside the studio?
Do you actually find out what they're going through?
Some of them do,
Yeah.
actually. I mean, it takes quite some bravery to do that, but some of them do actually come through and express how they're experiencing the rest of the space in the city outside just the classroom.
And a lot has changed, hey, because I think when I was studying through Feesmas Fall. The climate was completely different.
Yeah.
And I think I guess the passion to do architecture then was almost like a collective passion to a certain degree, that we were a very passionate group of people.
Yeah.
We were like,
Love that
we were
group of students.
we were there, like and I think the students we have now this time, just seeing them, they have different passions. And the passions aren't necessarily what they're studying all the time. And I think bringing those into studio is also quite interesting to see, okay, how do we now create this relationship with what your passions are and what it is that architecture is expecting from you. And I think I'm realizing that the students, hey, these Gen what's
They're on a different level.
They're on a different level. And it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest thing, is that it's a mixed bag. It's not a collective.
Yeah.
Everyone is like this. It's actually, and that's a lot more work, and
Yeah.
that's why I think you have to change your brain.
Very, very. It is so
Yeah.
much work.
Yeah.
Goodness, teaching this generation of students is tough.
Wow.
And they also bring out tough questions. They are not afraid to ask
Yes.
difficult questions.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, and they're not going to accept your answer just because you
are the
their
lecturer.
and that's it.
Of course.
And I think that's, to me, so interesting and powerful to bring that into the student, to understand that they have opinions.
Yeah.
And where and how do we engage those opinions? Sometimes those opinions are not informed by,
Yes.
real stuff.
Yeah.
But interesting nonetheless.
I actually have a small little story where I was teaching history and theory, and we were now speaking about apartheid spatial planning. And a certain student of a certain particular race raised their hand saying, I don't understand what this has to do with architecture. I thought we were in architecture school.
Wow.
And with all their guts and livers,
Yes.
they asked, they're like, ma'am, what does this have to do with architecture?
Wow.
To be honest, I don't see why
I
this
thought
is
we were here to
relevant.
study architecture.
I thought we were here to study architecture.
Wow.
And I was confused by the question because the word space is in there.
Wow.
But I think there was more of a, why are we talking about politics that have nothing to do with us at this in 2024, 2025, 2026. And I found it difficult to answer that question actually, because my natural instinct was to say, well, we are talking about space, aren't we? And that's why we need to know the history of how the space was developed. I wanted to say all of those things, but then I started to think, let me rather show than tell. And I think from showing and telling, it really was easier for them to then understand. So I told the student, listen, just stick with it. Just stick with it. You'll see what it has to do with architecture. The story does go full circle. But I realized that just mansplaining or explaining something with this generation is just really challenging. Sometimes you have to find other ways of communicating. And I find it now coming back to Jabu, these other ways of communicating, especially now you are speaking towards, you're doing your PhD on this. What actually then was your breakthrough in trying to communicate the importance of this as your PhD, and why?
And I always go back to that same group of students, the 2015, 2016, because they presented an opportunity that has not come in a while. They were, one, very concerned about the curriculum, but what was being taught, how it was being taught, and what was not being taught. And for the first time, I had to really think and evaluate my own learning and teaching practice to go, what am I teaching actually? Who does it prioritize? Whose voice is being silenced through my teaching? And I think that moment for me was a defining moment for me to reflect not only on what I teach, on how I teach, and why I teach what I teach. Because I understand that actually education itself is not a neutral space. It is a political space. I choose the content that I'm going to deliver. I choose the resources that I'm going to draw from, the precedents, the learning guides, all of those things. They are a choice that I make, but I've been making that choice unconscious before. Now I'm very conscious about, now that I've made these selections, what voices are missing? And then go back, bring in the voices that were missing when I first made that selection. I think that moment to me was a defining moment, and I'm constantly reminded about that call.
Sure. And now we've made it. We're in the door. We're in the door. We're here to be in the door. Now that we are basically reaching the end of our beautiful conversation, I think we like doing this new thing. I keep forgetting what it's called. Dickson, what is this thing called? Is it called fire questions? What is it called?
Is it fire lighters or fire something? I've forgotten also.
You have to excuse us for the terminology, but we're going to ask you rapid questions. Rapid questions that need rapid answers.
What are my questions?
Let's go.
You can be inspired with the ones, but
Uh-huh.
let me start with the first one.
Uh-huh.
What example do you have of an architecture that consistently embodies love for you?
Ooh. Consistently. My mother's womb.
Ooh.
Your mother's
Womb.
womb. Oh, wow. Do you remember your?
I think so. I have memories of me kicking in that space, floating and swimming in that space.
Wow.
I want to know more.
It was supposed to be rocket.
Boom, boom.
Okay, Dickson, it's your turn.
Do you think a time will come where history, the past, the colonial past, will be irrelevant to the teaching of architecture?
No. I think it will become even more relevant
Mhm.
to the teaching of architecture, unless we want to repeat the history. And we're seeing a lot of signs of erasing history in both local but also international and global discourse. But I think that the danger with that is that we risk repeating it if we lose sight of it.
Last rapid question.
Uh-huh.
What do you imagine the world would look like if we all implemented exactly what you're teaching?
Pink, blue, white, fluffy. It would have a lot of balloons in it. It would
The opposite of this place. A lot of flowers,
butterflies everywhere,
Yeah.
and would smell like cocoa and roses.
Oh
Wow.
wow!
I think we can't go any further. Let's just remain in this world of cocoa. Wow.
Roses.
Roses.
Oh,
Great.
Thank you so much, Jabu. This is such a
Thank
pleasure.
Thank
Such a
you.
breath of fresh air. Like
And-
really.
And we always say, you know, when we have such an amazing conversation, we always say that we hope this is not the last. We hope that we have more conversations on different topics, so, you know, everything architecture and anything. And the next time when we see you, so that you know what I'm trying to say. You know,
Something is gonna happen very soon.
yeah, so that when the next time we see you, we can't just
Very
you know
soon.
We've got other titles.
exactly.
It might be before this episode goes online.
you know. Great. No, thank you so much, Jabu.
Thank you guys for inviting me in for this pleasant chat. It's really been amazing. Thank you.
Lovely.
And thank you for being in prayer. I thought I was gonna get you.
Awesome.
Thanks.